My guest today is an award-winning art quilter known for bold color, improv piecing, and curves that seem impossible. But they're there in front of your eyes, and it's amazing. Her work feels playful, modern, and full of movement, and she has a wonderful way of helping quilters loosen up, trust themselves, and just enjoy the process. Today, I'll have a chat with Cindy Grisdela. Welcome to the Quilter on Fire podcast. I'm Brandy Maslowski, and if there's one thing I've learned from hundreds of conversations with quilters, artists, entrepreneurs, and makers from around the world, it's this. There isn't one right way to build a creative life. Some of my guests found quilting as children, others discovered it later in life. Some are building businesses, some are winning awards, and some are simply making time to create between work, family, and everything else life throws in their way. What they all have in common is a willingness to stay curious, keep learning, and keep making. Each week, I bring you honest conversations, practical insights, inspiring stories, and the occasional lesson learned the hard way. So you can spend less time wondering what's possible and more time creating a life you love. Whether you're stitching in your studio, driving to work, walking the dog, or dreaming about your next quilt project, I'm so glad you're here. Let's light that creative fire together. Today, I'm chatting with quilt artist, teacher, and author Cindy Grisdela. I recently met her at QuiltCon, interviewing her about her quilt that was accepted into Quilt National 2025. It was so fun to meet her in person. Cindy is known for her bright, modern improv quilts and her relaxed approach to creativity. She creates freehand curved quilts without patterns or templates, and her work has been shown in galleries and quilt exhibits across the U.S. She's also the author of Artful Improv, Adventures in Improv Quilts, and Freehand Curve Quilts, where she encourages quilters to let go of perfection and have more fun with color and design. Her work just feels happy. Her quilts are bold and artistic and full of personality. So let's explore the story of Cindy Grisdela. Cindy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Brandy. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so happy to have you on the podcast. When I met you in person at QuiltCon, immediately I was like, okay, get your mind focused. You have to have her on the podcast. Set that aside. Let's do the task at hand, right?
Right. Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, it was really fun. It was nice to meet you. It was really fun to see your quilts up close. So I want to start at the beginning. So where did the creativity begin for you in your life?
Oh, that's a great question. I have always been needing to create. When I was a little kid, I did all kinds of, my parents were very wonderful in providing me with paper and crayons or markers or whatever, and from a very young age. And I can remember as a child, I did a lot of different kinds of things, trying to figure out what creative pursuit was going to work for me. So I did sewing. My mother taught me to sew when I was about 10. I took a lot of classes in painting and drawing and ceramics and things like that. So I was always doing something and trying to make something out of nothing.
So a lot of room for creativity in your household. Was there someone along your journey in your education or anywhere else along your life who shaped your creativity?
Well, my mom teaching me to sew was hugely impactful, but there weren't any quilters in my family. So I sewed garments as a teenager and a young person. And as I got involved in quilt making, sort of by accident, I ran into an article in a women's magazine when I was around the time I was in college, and the idea of making something useful and beautiful out of fabric and thread just grabbed me by the throat. But I didn't have any teachers then. I just, I made my first quilt from that magazine article, and then I kind of just puttered around with it for a while. But there were teachers and people who really helped me along the way. One of those was Gwen Marston. Although I never got the chance to take a class with her, I did meet her one time, and I was hugely influenced by her books. And then also Nancy Crow. Later, I've been studying with Nancy since 2017, and she's had a huge impact on my work.
Oh, I can imagine. Well, let's take a closer look at the timeline. So was there kind of an educational or career path that led you right into quilting?
Well, I have a degree in art history partly because I went to college when I was 17, and I was interested in political science at that time. And I took my first political science class, and I realized that in order to get a job in political science, you had to like cold call people, knock on doors and
Oh.
things. And I'm an introvert, and that just wasn't going to work for me. So I had taken a class in high school on art history and just loved it. And so I thought, well, let's look into that. And so I ended up, I wanted to be a studio artist, but at 17, I was too shy and too afraid of doing it. So art history worked for me really well.
Yeah.
And but the interesting thing about my path is that I didn't get a job in art history.
Mm.
I ended up working in the business field. I got an MBA, and I was a journalist for a number of years. And so I think that what happened for me was that all of those things that I learned as as a teenager, a young adult, came full circle in 2005, I guess, when I finally I started my art business. I felt like, my art background and my business background kind of came together to make this all work for me.
Yeah, and I can sort of see there must have been a moment where you realized, okay, quilting is my thing. I can combine this artist and business thing. And how did it lead into teacher and author and everything you've become today?
Well, that's kind of an interesting story. People ask me that sometimes. How did you write a book?
Yeah.
And it was one of those things that I think is important. I volunteered. I was involved with SAQA, Studio Art Quilt Associates,
Yeah.
and they had a conference. They have conferences every year. They had one in my community in Washington, D.C. in 2014.
Mm-hmm.
And I volunteered to host a panel discussion on textile artists in the Washington, D.C. area. And so I found, 4 artists, and we had this, sort of panel discussion. And Martha Seelman, who's the executive director of SAQA, said to me before we did it, she said, "Well, we want to see your work too." And I said, "Well, why do you want to see my work?" And because I just thought of myself at that time I just was sort of puttering around with it, but I had made the move from traditional to contemporary at that time. And so I said, okay, so at the end, I put a slideshow together of the work that I had been doing. And there happened to be an editor from C&T Publishing in the audience.
Mm.
And she came up to me after it was over, and she said, "You need to write a book." And I said, "I do?"
Wow.
So it was so cool because I did, it just was an opportunity that came to me because I raised my hand and I volunteered for something else.
Yeah.
And so I wrote Artful Improv, and it was published I wrote it in 2015. It was published in 2016.
Yeah.
And I started teaching because of the book, because in the book, they wanted student work so that people could see that, yes, Cindy can do this, but other people can do it too.
Yeah.
And so I started teaching, and I wasn't sure if I was going to like it because, again, I'm an introvert. And it turned out that I can talk for days about something that I love.
So back when you were doing your first traditional quilts and you hadn't gone contemporary yet, did you ever expect this would become your career?
I did not. It was a dream, and I'm really, really excited. I just I love teaching. I love helping other artists explore their own creativity. Before the pandemic, I spent about 10 years traveling around the United States showing and selling my work.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'd set up a booth, wherever it was. And people would come into my booth, and it was mostly women. And they would say, "Oh, you're so creative. I could never do that."
Mm-hmm.
And it broke my heart because I just feel like everybody has the ability to be creative and they just need a little encouragement or a little push. And so that was what I was thinking about when I was writing that book was I want it to be something that people can refer to again and again. They could feel like they're talking to me and I'm going to help them, realize their own creative potential.
Yeah, I love it. So, diving a bit deeper into your work, when inspiration strikes, what does your process look like?
That's a great question too. I'm a very sort of organic, intuitive artist. I don't tend to do a lot of sketching. I don't, I have a lot of students now who are using programs on their iPad to come up with ideas. And I don't have any problem with any of that. It's just my process is I just dive into the fabric and I cut it up and I put it up on my design wall and then I see what happens. And a lot of times, it's the first idea doesn't work exactly. That's another thing that I think is important for students to know is that even though this is my job, this is my world, this is what I do, it doesn't always work the first time.
Yeah.
And so I usually start out with a color idea, or sometimes I have a photograph of a painting or some landscape that I've taken. So it starts, with a little bit of a germ of an idea, and then I have a process of setting forth a few guidelines to help me get started.
Yeah, it's really cool to hear a little bit about how your mind works, especially having looked at all of your work the last few weeks getting ready for this podcast. So, what do you think it is that people connect with most in your work when they're looking at it?
I think that people connect mostly with the color and the energy that I try to convey. It's kind of funny because when I first started quilting, I was terrified of color. I made so many blue quilts because that was what was comfortable.
Yeah.
And, don't talk to me about yellow or orange. And then you see the quilt behind me and it's got a lot of yellow and orange in it.
Yeah.
So I just feel like it's something, the color is something that really just sort of is where I start almost all the time.
Yeah. And if you're listening right now and you're wondering, gosh, I've got to see what we're talking about here, just go to Cindy Grisdela on Instagram and start scrolling, and you will be lost for a while because it's so wonderful. So the website is cindygrisdela.com. So, Cindy, tell us what we'll find there if we go take a look.
So my website has a lot of information. I have a blog that I write not as often as I used to, but I still keep up with it. I have free tutorials on several different things that I like to do, facing quilts instead of binding, mounting quilts on canvas. I started doing that when I was traveling and exhibiting, and a new one that I just put up about making a string scrap quilt from your scraps to use up your scraps.
Mm-hmm.
You'll also see my workshops and my lectures should you wish to have me join your group. And you will have, there's a portfolio of my work, my teaching schedule, all of that. Yeah,
and you even have this one tab on the website that says quilts at home. So is that quilts that are like placed in a home so you can sort of see what they'd look like?
Those are quilts that people have purchased and they've sent me photographs of them in their spaces, which I always think is fun to see.
Yeah.
And that's just an idea. I used it a lot more when I was actively traveling to sell my work so that people could see that quilts can hang on the wall very easily.
Yeah. Okay, well, give us a glimpse of your business in a nutshell. What do you bring to the world?
Well, I have my books, which I'm very proud of, and my teaching. I travel at least twice a month to teach. I do also do a lot of Zoom lectures and Zoom classes. I have my own independent Zoom workshops that I host myself, which are also on the website. I feel like my claim to fame, I guess, is that I'm a very kind, encouraging teacher, and I try diligently through my books, through my teaching, even through exhibiting my work, to encourage people that they can do this too, and that it's more like play than work. Yeah. And if you approach it that way, then it's fun.
Yeah, those are good traits to have in a teacher, especially if that's what you're known for. People will invite you back again and again.
Right.
Okay, so let's talk about your art. What was the very first fine art quilt that you remember putting on display somewhere?
Well, I have the Washington, D.C. area has a lot of opportunities. And the very first quilt that I had on display was at um, the Art League, which is a group of artists at the Torpedo Factory in Alexandria, Virginia. They put quilts up on white gallery walls and, I'm sorry, quilts and also paintings. And that was exciting because a quilt was accepted in one of those shows
Yeah.
in the early 2000s, and it hung on the wall with paintings and photographs and quote unquote fine art.
Yeah.
I had several of those opportunities in the beginning, which was very exciting.
And what was your first solo show?
I had my first solo show was at a coffee house in my local area, and that's something that people can look into.
Yeah.
A local. I also had an early solo show in the public library meeting room in my
Mhm.
in my town, and that's something I encourage people to explore because often libraries and coffee shops are looking for art to decorate their walls, and you can get people to actually see what you're doing, which is pretty exciting.
Oh, yeah, that is such good advice because I mean, it can be daunting to click send on a portfolio that you want to send to a gallery, right? But why not start off with a community, more comforting place that's more achievable, like a library or a coffee
Right.
shop? I love it.
Yeah. And then, I've had a solo show at the Virginia Quilt Museum, and I've had a solo show at that gallery, that Art League gallery. And I had a solo show at a community college that invited me to show my work. And I also had a pretty big solo show in France at the European Patchwork meeting a couple of years ago.
Wow, that's a huge endeavor to bring all those quilts overseas to go there. And so were you there and did you do any other things, teaching or lectures while you were there?
I didn't. I just I did. I was a little. It was a little bit daunting,
I
but
bet.
the director there is super nice
Yeah.
and was very helpful. And my husband went with me, and we did some personal traveling around that time. But that was so. It was just seeing people from all over Europe
Yeah.
and all over. There were people there from from not just Europe, and hearing my work described as beautiful in
Yeah.
so many different languages. I mean,
Oh.
it sounds a little bit braggy to say that, but it was so nice.
No, it doesn't sound braggy. It sounds wonderful. It's a good reflection on what a big achievement that was, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you love this quote. Inspiration exists, but it must find you working by Picasso. Why is that quote meaningful to you?
Well, I think that it's so important. Sometimes artists, we read about artists in the world and they say, well, I wasn't inspired today, so I haven't made anything. But I think it's important to be in the studio,
Mhm.
even if you're having a creative block or you're not the inspiration muse has not struck you,
Yeah.
because you never know when I have had quilts come together from just random bits that were just laying on my cutting table.
Yeah.
And I was in my studio sort of tidying up because I didn't have, I was a little bit blocked or I didn't have anything going on. And I thought, oh, I wonder what would happen if. And
Mhm.
I took those bits and pieces and put them up on the wall and started playing with them. And then something wonderful happened that I didn't expect.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Okay. So, such a great quote. Thank you for bringing that to the podcast. So, what does community mean to you, and how is that infused into your business?
I one of the first things that I did when I started thinking about making my quilting passion into more than just a hobby is I joined a multimedia art group locally in my community. I'm
Mhm.
very fortunate that was available to me. It's not available to everyone, but if it is available to you in your community, think about joining it because I met painters and potters and photographers, and often I was the only fiber artist in the group. But being around creative people makes me more creative.
Yeah.
And so that whole creative community of artists that lifted me up in the beginning. And now I have this whole community of quilters who, I've taught them, or they've bought my book, or they've, reached out to me on Instagram or whatever. And this whole group of people that I try to lift up. It's just, and my painter friends sometimes say to me, wow, you are so lucky as a quilter because you have so many opportunities to get your work out there in the world.
Yeah.
All of the, from just traditional quilting shows to QuiltCon to Quilt National to all of the shows that we are fortunate enough to have the opportunity to show our work.
Yeah, so true. That doesn't exist in all mediums, right?
It does not. No.
Okay, so you did some team teaching. It was a nice collab with Maria Schell. And I'll just do a quick mention that she was on the podcast last December, 2025. It was episode 237. So if you're listening right now, go back and listen to that episode if you missed it. But let's talk about what you did with Maria Schell at Madeline Island.
Super, super fun. I've done it now twice, and we have another collaboration scheduled for September of 2027. The details are not available yet, but it's very exciting. So the two of us with two different teachers did this team teaching event at Madeline Island where we talked about the improv process from three different viewpoints. Because there's lots of improv teachers out there, and it's interesting that everybody does it a little bit differently. And Maria has her methods and I have mine. And then we taught the first time with Sarah Bond, who we sadly lost in 2024. And then last year we did it with Susan Lapham, who is a new on the teaching scene. And it was really the first. We talk about color, we talk about improv techniques, three different ways to do improv techniques, three different ways to how do you take those improv techniques and make them into something, because just making elements and throwing them up on the wall is not necessarily the way that either of us work. And so, but people are sometimes curious about, I'd love to do improv, but I don't understand how you don't have a pattern. I don't understand how you turn those elements or those units into something wonderful. And that's what we do.
Yeah. Well, and it's really thoughtful for Madeline Island to bring you guys together with different perspectives, different, techniques of doing it. So if you're listening right now and you're thinking 2027, the fall of 2027 might be achievable for me, look up Madeline Island. Just Google Madeline Island and you'll find it, and watch Cindy Grisdela on Instagram for that announcement, because I'm certain you're going to put it all up there, right?
We will.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so what parts of quilting or your business are keeping you busiest right now? Let's talk about books, teaching, speaking, travel. What's going on right now?
I have been traveling almost nonstop. This first half of 2026. And I've done some really fun things. I taught on a quilting cruise to Hawaii in February. I taught for a guild in Cape Cod in Massachusetts. So I was on the Atlantic coast. Then I went back to the Pacific coast and I taught for Empty Spools right there on the Pacific Ocean. And then I'm just back from teaching at a quilting arts seminar on Mackinac Island in Michigan. So lots of water. But it's right now I am teaching and traveling quite a lot. And so my ability to do my own work suffers a little bit, but I'm always thinking about it. And so, I do, whenever I'm home, I try to get into the studio and do something, even if it's just sewing scraps together mindlessly.
Yeah. So teaching and speaking and traveling, lots going on in your business. I want to dive into your three books for a minute. So you mentioned the first one, but I want to talk about the other two as well. So just go there.
Sure. So the second one is called Adventures in Improv Quilts, and that was my COVID project. So I wrote that book in 2020, and it was published in 2021 because it takes about 18 months from signing a contract with the publishing company to having a book in my hand. And when COVID hit, I had been teaching, but all of my contracts went away because nobody was meeting in person. And so I had a group in New York State say, what do you think about this thing called Zoom?
Yeah.
And so I said, well, I don't know anything about it, but let me learn. And so I did that lecture and workshop on Zoom, and my business just kind of exploded after that. Because I was willing to, to those first Zoom classes, I'm thinking, oh, cringe, but we were just doing the best we could.
Yeah.
And so the second book is kind of a sequel to the first one, takes the idea of making improv units in a little bit of a new direction. The idea that you can do them easily with just one block unit, or you can mix up the block units, or you can make an improv quilt that's completely designed on the wall before you sew it together with or without blocks. And so all of my books have information about color and design and techniques and how to quilt them.
Yeah.
My new book just came out in January of 2026, and it's called Freehand Curve Quilts. And it is a little bit different because it just focuses on curves, and it's all about cutting large-scale curves freehand without patterns or templates, and then adding fun stuff to it. Like, you can do basic curves, and that's fun.
Yeah.
But then when you start adding confetti pops and wonky triangles and, all kinds of fun stuff to it. So
yeah, I love it. It's so much fun. So thinking back to your first book with C&T, Artful Improv, how did it feel to have your own book in your hands for the first time?
Oh my gosh, it was just amazing. I had this dream that I wanted to write a book, and it worked. It worked out, and the idea that that people would actually buy it.
I know.
I mean, it felt great to have it in my hands, but the idea that people wanted it was was great, and it's going to be 10 years old in the fall, and it's people still want to take a look at that one.
Yeah, so great. And I have this situation just happening yesterday actually, that is reminds me, it's kind of similar, where I reached a big milestone in the podcast, and I was chatting about it on social media, and I realized I can't believe anyone's actually listening to this.
Right. Yeah.
I was like, what are you guys doing? Why are you listening to me? But it's just so heartwarming. I feel so good. And I love that I get to meet all these amazing people like you.
So we appreciate you doing it, because then we get to meet them too.
Yeah. So many wonderful people in this industry, and I love lifting them up. And actually, it's really nice, I think, to reflect on all the wonderful things they've done. So that's a wonderful part of it as well.
Sure.
Okay, so let's go into a break now. We're going to take a quick break. And then when we come back, we're going to talk all about your studio space, what brings you joy, and what's coming soon. We'll be right back. Have you ever heard me announce something on the podcast and thought, wait, how did everyone else know about this but me? Here's the secret. The people on my newsletter hear about everything first. Every Tuesday, they get a preview of the newest Quilter on Fire podcast episode before it lands in their podcast app. Every Friday, they get my weekly roundup with the latest tools, tips, and tricks, where I'm off to next in the world, my latest YouTube video, and things that caught my attention in the quilting world. And if you're interested in quilt travel, this is the big one. Newsletter subscribers are the first to hear about international trips. My Japan tour filled in less than 2 weeks, and I have more incredible destinations in the works. When those trips are announced, newsletter subscribers get the news first. So if you don't want to miss a podcast, a travel opportunity, or something exciting happening in the Quilter on Fire community, get yourself on the list today. It's easy. Just head to quilteronfire.com, scroll all the way to the bottom of the page, enter your email address, and you're in. Join thousands of quilters who are already getting the inside scoop. That's quilteronfire.com. Scroll to the bottom, sign up, and I'll see you in your inbox. And we are back with Cindy Grisdela. Cindy, what does your studio space say about you?
It says I'm a big mess.
But it's a good creative space, right?
It's a creative mess. So my husband and I downsized about, let's call it 14 years ago when the kids grew up and we didn't need so much space.
Yeah.
But the cool thing about it is we got a smaller house, but I have a bigger studio.
Oh, nice.
It's not huge,
Yeah.
but it's mine. And I don't have to, share it with the guest room or anything like that.
Yeah.
And I live in a townhouse on a small lake. So my studio is in the walkout basement. And so I can see the water out as I'm sewing, and there are geese and goslings and foxes and all kinds of cool herons, all kinds of cool things outside the window. But it's kind of a long, skinny space. And so I have to have things that do double duty. I have my fabric storage is in runner baskets underneath both my cutting surface and my ironing surface, for example. Yeah.
So what brings you the most joy creatively?
Oh, I just love to cut and sew. It's just so much fun to just, because I don't follow patterns anymore. So I'm using my rotary cutter like a drawing tool, and I'm drawing these lines and shapes and then sewing them together and putting them up on the wall and seeing how they talk to each other. Yeah. And the puzzle of it, putting the puzzle together, is what I really love.
Yeah. So the zone for you is kind of just immersing yourself in the cutting and the fabric and the design process.
Yes, exactly.
Love it. So what's the best thing you do for your own self-care?
Well, as I said, we live on this lovely little lake, and I walk around the lake every day, sometimes once, sometimes twice. And so getting outside is really important for me to just I get really good ideas sometimes when I'm just walking. And also I take photographs as I'm going, and, different seasons, different weather. And I keep those for inspiration too.
Yeah, so good. Okay, so this next segment is the feature of the podcast. We are going to talk about the quilts. So is there a quilt or quilt project that's most memorable for you?
Yes, I think, it's like asking me who's my favorite child, but there's my quilt Aquarius is one that has particular meaning for me. I think because it was one of the first quilts that I designed from a fabric sketch entirely on my own. So I had a little probably 12 by 14 black and white idea that I had sewn together. Yeah. And I enlarged it just mentally on the design wall, and I put this piece together trying to do a few things. One, there are no blocks in this quilt. So it was engineered. It's like 50 by 50 maybe inches. Yeah. And so the whole thing was designed on the wall and then engineered together. And I tried to use my colors, using things I know about color theory, that warm colors advance and cool colors recede, so that I got this visual texture in 3D dimension with my focal point was coming forward, and then I had, cooler colors behind.
Yeah, it's so good. It's black. It's got this black grid work in curves, and the colors just pop. And then also you've got these secret gradations of blue throughout. It's just lovely. Yeah. It really, I could see why that set you on your path to keep going. And recently that was acquired by a major private collector.
Yes. I was I was sad to see it go, because it's one of my favorite pieces, but I'm really grateful that it's been acquired, and that it will be part of that collection.
And when I met you last year, we were talking about musings too. So tell me all about that one.
So that's Musings 2 is the quilt that was accepted to Quilt National 2025, which is always an honor and a thrill to get into Quilt National. And I have been working recently with this kind of a new series of work where I am working with larger pieces and fewer pieces. I'm known as a very scrappy quilter, and I can, make little bits and pieces and put them together with the best of them. But this series is more about the shapes and the interaction between the shapes and the background. And so it was really exciting to me to these the shapes in this quilt are kind of saucer-like,
Mm-hmm.
and they move a little bit. And so the saucers are brighter, vibrant, more saturated colors. And then the background are these kind of colors that some people would call dull, and they are dull.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that I've been playing with recently is the importance of putting the fabrics that are a little bit dull, a little less interesting. They don't jump into your cart when you go to the fabric store,
Mm-hmm.
but they're necessary to provide a base for those bright colors to really pop.
Yeah, it creates a real foundation. And I love the way that the shapes of the saucers are vertical in some spots and they kind of fall into the background. And then when they become horizontal, they're just blasting. They just
Right.
pop right out. I love it. It
Yeah.
really draws you in to take a closer look. And what do these slices mean? What's the meaning behind this quilt? So it's kind of
Yeah.
cool to look at.
Yeah.
And it was really exciting to interview you about it last year as well. So if you
Yeah.
want to find those interviews, actually, I did interviews for a whole bunch of wonderful people at QuiltCon last year for Quilt National. So you'll find it on their YouTube channel. So I encourage you to Google that and go check that out. So let's talk about Three Friends.
Three Friends was a fun quilt that I started that one actually in a Nancy Crow workshop.
Yeah.
And I was trying to play with the idea of this very large scale figures.
Mm-hmm.
And the quilt itself, I think, is about 60 by 70 or so. It's pretty large for me. And so I wanted these figures to have they're different. Some of them are moving one direction, some in another. And I also tried in this one to use backgrounds. In that one, the backgrounds are light value fabrics, but the backgrounds are made of fabrics that are similar but not the same.
Mm-hmm.
And so they create a little bit of a visual activity in the background, not just, plain beige, for example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you can do that whether you're a traditional quilter or a contemporary quilter. You can use fabrics that are similar but not the same to create movement in your quilts. I had a hard time finishing that one. I had to take it apart and it had to marinate on the design wall for a long time. But that was one that was in the solo show in France.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really interesting to watch people look at it and say, oh, those look like chairs, or
Mm-hmm.
they look like sailboats, or, so it's one of those things with art that people bring to it what they see, something different depending on what they bring from their personal life.
Yeah, and I love to hear what you're talking about with the foundation or the background. You've used these low volume fabrics, but it's not just one blank canvas. It's got
Right.
some different color values in there. And another really cool thing that's happening in this quilt, it's kind of like the dance. So there's a really strong foundation of color at the bottom. And then the figures are kind of moving in different directions.
Right.
And then there's this kind of floating, dancey parts at the top as well. So there's a lot of movement and it really it brings you in for the deeper story, right?
Yeah, there's also in that one a lot of very dense free motion quilting,
Mm-hmm.
which is I don't do it in all my quilts, but I like the idea of it because it brings people in again a little closer to see what's going on there.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about confetti.
So confetti was another one of those quilts that so when I started studying with Nancy Crow in 2017, I went there because I wanted to learn how to work larger,
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted to learn how to work in a more artistic fashion. And Nancy is the premier artist in fabric that, that does those things.
Yeah.
And so confetti was another one of those where I started out with an idea. I didn't do that one in any of her workshops, but I was using the ideas that I was learning, and I wanted to create this sort of contemporary bullseye of quilt. And so I just started with, there's the center is quarter square, quarter circles, and they're cut deliberately very wonky, very differently, because they, then each curve, there's 4 quadrants. Each curve creates a different visual texture. And the thing that was fun about that was that I put these 4 pieces together. Those are blocks, and one of them was smaller than the rest. And I didn't want to cut the rest of them down. And so that's one of the things that I love so much about improv, because a design problem can turn into a design opportunity.
Yeah.
And so what I did was I made that one block bigger by putting in these sort of checkerboard squares, using one light value and one dark value plus a pop of color from the quilt. And I think that quilt turned out much more interesting because I had to pivot and do something different than it would have if I'd made it the way I planned.
Yeah, absolutely. And this one, best use of color, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
And the colors are extraordinary because it's not necessarily colors that you would go to the store and buy because they all go together. It's from your stash. I can just imagine that it's from your stash and you're picking and choosing. The interesting thing about this quilt for me, and I know everyone is going to find their own different story from looking at an artist's work, but I see somebody's looking at me in this quilt. And so it's interesting. The reason why I see eyes in this quilt is because in those quarter circles in the beginning, you've got these slices in there. And I'm seeing in those slices that the pieces they're pieced as well. There's not just one slice of one color. They're all pieced, and they all have these tiny little elements of black. And those look like the pupils to me, look like 4 different people like looking out at me. And then I see these almost like eyelashes around the outside, the big ones. And so anyway, I'm looking at that and I'm like, this piece is looking right back at me, and I'm enjoying every minute of it. So anyway, everyone has a different fun take on things, and it might not have been your intention at all, but it really tells a story to me anyways. So
I think that's a successful quilt if it tells somebody else a different story.
True. Yeah. It's so much fun. Okay, so let's talk about the next one, which is called Supernova.
So Supernova it's a quilt, again, using that idea of brights on a base of dull fabric. And I made that one. It's actually I have 2 that are similar that I made. The first one is called Fireflies, and I made it. I was in a creative slump and I couldn't figure out how to get out of it. So I just started cutting these curves and playing with them, and that quilt sold, and I missed it. So I made another one that is similar but not the same. And so there's that quilt is part of my Freehand Curve series. It's in the new book, and it uses very bright, vibrant coral orange and neon yellow and red and purple to create these curves that go in different directions. And then it has pops that I call them confetti pops, that go off, and it feels like a star exploding. Yeah. And so that one was fun to make. So you said that you called it a dull background, but when I'm looking at this one, yes, it's rather than the one like in Musings that was sort of the brown colors, this one is like a really deep, rich, dark background, right? And then when you put those colors on there, they pop like they're neon. Like it really is a huge contrast. So, and this one was featured in your book you mentioned, and it just really has this amazing creative play and bold expression. Like I love that this is what takes you out of a creative slump. Like I'm looking at this like there's no creative slump there. But it's kind of fun to know that you're like everyone else and you do have a creative slump, and this kind of fun play can absolutely take you out of it. It goes back to your point of just put your head down and do that work, and the creativity will follow, right? Okay, I love that. And when that happens and you feel it,
It's
just fabulous.
Yeah, magic. Okay. One more we want to talk about, and it's called Dance Rhythms.
So this is a very new series that I'm working on. Again, with this, sort of moving forward from the musings to idea of putting shapes and making the interesting things about this series that Dance Rhythms is part of is that if you look at it, sometimes you can't tell which are the shapes that are the primary ones and which are the background ones. And so if you look at it in at two different times, it's like an optical illusion.
Yeah.
And you can do that with color, you can do that with value, you can do that with saturation level in your colors. And it's just, I started this series, my son and I my son moved from the West Coast to the East Coast last summer and asked me to help him drive his car and his dog across country. And I saw just this is just a case of inspiration finding you anywhere.
Yeah.
I saw in a hotel lobby, I saw some photograph and I just thought, wow, what if I did some shapes like that and I expanded them and I stretched them and it was fun. So it also reminds me of this fun time with my son.
Yeah, so cool. And when I look at this quilt, I think, oh, she's almost going like monochromatic, like orange on brown or brown on orange. But the reality is there is everything from a pale, pale peach to a bright, bright pink, but it all kind of just blends in together. It looks so good. Yeah. So I love what you're doing. And can you tell us just a little bit about more of the quilting? Because you've talked about one where you did a lot of density, but this one's more like matchstick quilting. How do you sort of choose the quilting that's going to go with each piece?
That's a great question. I get asked that a lot. And a lot of times the reason is sort of rooted in what's going on in the quilt. So in the Dancing Rhythms quilt, I really want people to focus on those shapes. And I don't want them to be distracted by little fiddly free motion quilting. So I thought the matchstick quilting there is appropriate.
Yeah.
But in other quilts, like Supernova has got a lot of very dense free motion quilting in it. Three Friends does. And I love free motion quilting. When I was a traditional quilt maker, I was a hand quilter. And I had to be dragged to free motion, kicking and screaming.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because I realized that my list of projects was getting longer and longer, and hand quilting takes a long time, although I still do love it. So it's just a matter of what do I want to emphasize in a particular design, and will free motion quilting enhance that, or is another kind of just basic quilting more appropriate?
Yeah, I just love it. It's so nice to see how you bring it all together. Okay, so let's talk about what's coming soon. What are you excited about right now? I remember you mentioned something about New Zealand, so tell me about that.
Yes, I was invited to teach at the Quilt Symposium in New Zealand this fall. I'm very, very excited about that. I'm teaching 2 classes, Artful Improv Medallion and my fabulous Freehand Curves, which is based on my new book. And so I've never been to New Zealand, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, watch the Instagram and keep an eye on you to live vicariously through you in New Zealand. So if you take a look to your left or right, wherever your design wall is, what's on your design wall right now?
Well, I have my design wall as my background.
Okay,
for teaching,
so it's finished quilts.
and for doing interviews. So I have 2 things on my design wall. One is this finished quilt, the 70 Serpentine, which is on the cover of my new book. And the other thing underneath it is my string scrap quilt that I've been working on most of the last few months, because it's something that I can just come down to the studio for an hour and make something, even when I'm traveling, and so it's just, that's sort of, I call that sort of sewing therapy.
Yeah.
when I just need to be creative, but I don't really have the bandwidth to think about it too hard.
Yeah, I love that. I've gotten into the habit of leaving something that I still need to accomplish beside my machine. So at any given
Yes,
time, if I've got only 15 minutes, I can run down, zip through a few lines of stitching and feel like I've accomplished something. So
exactly.
I
That's
love that.
hugely important.
Yeah. Okay, so next up on the podcast, we have the lightning round robin. It's fast and it's fun. Are you ready?
Sure.
What triggers inspiration for you?
Color.
Okay, and what is a skill you'd love to learn?
Oh, I would love to learn pottery.
Mm, danger. It's going to be pricey. I know we always feel the same way about trying something new, right?
Yeah.
Okay, have you had any weird, crazy, or funny fan moments?
I have them fairly frequently, and it happens a lot at QuiltCon.
Yeah.
I'll just be walking the floor and somebody will come up to me and their mouth will drop open. They're saying, "Ah, you're Cindy Grisdela." I'm like, really? I don't, but I try to always be gracious and encouraging to people. And I love that people come up to me and they tell me that my book or books have meant a lot to them creatively. And these are people that I have never met before.
Oh.
And that's just really, it makes me happy that, that I'm able to, to be encouraging to people, even though I've never met them.
Yeah, always a joyful encounter, right?
Yes.
Okay, so has there been a mentor who's really influenced you along your journey?
I would say, I mean, I don't know if you can count Gwen Marston as mentor because I never really worked with her, but her books, just made all the difference for me when I was a traditional quilter, but I got tired of following patterns and I wanted to do something. I wanted, I wanted to be an artist. I wanted to do something that, that would be kind of uniquely mine. And she wrote a book called Liberated Quilt Making back in the 2000s, I think. And it just opened my eyes to a totally new way of thinking about my own creativity. And so I feel like, even though I did meet her once, she came to my guild in the late 90s, but I never was able to take a class with her.
Yeah, and it sounds like that really led you to finding your people like Nancy Crow, right?
Yeah. And Nancy, of course, Nancy has been a tremendous mentor to me recently in the last, 10 years or so. Yeah.
Yeah. And so sometimes there's so many that it's too hard to put them all in it, in a bucket. But okay, so what is your proudest accomplishment?
My books, I think, I just really, I feel like I never thought I'd write one book, much less three.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that's my legacy. That's going to outlive me.
Yeah. And just thinking how much joy you took out of Gwen Marston's book, the dream is that someday someone will take that joy from your books
Yeah,
as well.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. What's the best advice you've received?
So this one's kind of funny. I took one of my first teachers that I had was a local artist from Maryland named Donna Radner. And she taught me huge amounts about color and looking at my work in a different way, got me out of my blue period. And I met her at an opening probably 20 years ago. And I was talking to her and I said, I really would like to work a little bigger. And she just looked me straight in the eye and she said, Cindy, if you want to work bigger, you have to work with bigger shapes. Because I was at the time making, these tiny little improv piecing things, which I love, but making those. And so she suggested that I mark out my canvas, if you will, on my design wall. So if I want to make a quilt that's, 60 by 60, I use painter's tape or black strips of fabric, and I mark that canvas out so that I know that that's the space that I need to fill. And it's a limitation. Sometimes our limitations allow us to be more creative.
Yeah.
And that was hugely helpful.
Wow. So instead of miniaturizing a quilt, you went opposite and you went bigger. So great.
Right. Exactly.
She gave you permission. You probably didn't really need it, but she gave it to you, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And also that idea that, sometimes people say, oh, what should I bring on what's on, your supply list isn't specific
Yeah.
enough. And I say, well, you know what? You need to bring the fabrics that you like to work with in the colors that you like to work with across a range of values. And part of the creativity is in using what you have and making it work. That limitation often gives you more creativity, not less.
Yeah. Oh, these nuggets are so good. Okay. Do you have any furry friends in the studio?
I do. I have a black and white tuxedo cat that we rescued right before COVID. And she's my buddy.
Oh, what's her name?
Her name's Jessie.
Jessie. Oh, it's so nice to have a studio pal, right?
Yep.
Okay, well, thank you for braving the lightning round, Robin. That was really fun. So we've named the website at cindygrisdela.com, where we can find all of the wonderful things. And you are on Facebook and Instagram at Cindy Grisdela Quilts, right?
Right. Yes.
Okay, so make sure you give yourself a little time or a full afternoon with a cup of tea when you go and check out Cindy's Instagram feed. You will be there for a while. I guarantee it. So you're welcome. So now as we wrap up, Cindy, what do you want people to take away most from our conversation today?
Well, I want people to realize that if they want to be creative, they can be creative. And one of the taglines on my Artful Improv book was permission to play. And play is important. We remember when we were kids, we didn't worry about what people thought about what we did. We just did it because it was fun. And so I would love for people to take that, let perfectionism go off to the side and just use your creativity, cut into your fabric and play.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. What is it that's drawing me back upstairs to go do laundry? I need to stay down here and give myself permission to play. I love that. It's great advice. Well, Cindy, it's been so great to have you on the show. Thank you for sharing your story with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Brandy. It's been a lot of fun.
Yes, it certainly has. So that was my show with Cindy Grisdela. I love how she makes creativity feel lighter. She's not worried about perfection or following all the rules. She's focused on play, exploration, and enjoying the process. She also has a reputation for being encouraging as a teacher. You can tell she genuinely wants people to feel confident trying something new, even if it feels a little scary at first. And her color choices... Okay, you have to go to her website and look at the portfolio and look at all the quilts we talked about on the podcast today, because you will be in love. You will really enjoy that gallery. It is so, so good. Her quilts have so much movement and life in them. You're just going to have a lot of fun. And if you're listening right now, maybe this is your reminder to try the curve, to cut into the good fabric that you've been hoarding away and let yourself experiment a little. And today, I loved sharing the story of Cindy Grisdela with you. Just give me 30 seconds of your time. 2 things I want to say. The first thing is a huge thank you for listening and tuning into the show week after week. It means the world to me and my team, which consists of James, my podcast producer, DG, my virtual assistant, and Luna, my chocolate lab. This podcast really is a dream that started with the notion of surrounding myself with people who lift me up, but it has turned into so much more than that. We absolutely couldn't have imagined becoming an award-winning podcast. But secondly, we feel like we're only just getting started. And if you enjoy what we do here, please go to your favorite social media, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, or even YouTube, and follow Quilter on Fire. It's one small thing you can do for free to support this show. And here's a promise I'm going to make to you. I'll do everything in my power to make this the best show I can, just for you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening to the Quilter on Fire podcast. Remember to rate, review, and follow us on Apple Podcasts. Your support helps me reach more quilters just like you, striving for that perfect quilty lifestyle. Click on those 5 stars and share what you loved most about today's episode. Don't forget to hit the follow button if you haven't already. With new episodes dropping weekly, you won't want to miss out on the inspiring stories and tips we have in store. Until next time, dream big and have fun in the studio with the Quilter on Fire.